before 3 weeks ago in Poznan, because it will be very much a repetition. But on the other hand, I hope it is going to be, at least for those who are here today for the first time, new. And hopefully the multiplier event that Katia just mentioned at the end of August will also contain some new content, as far as, at least as this number 5 is concerned. So I'm going to talk about, like Katia said, the last output for the day, not from batch, because there's more coming tomorrow. This is titled Architectural Voices. I will explain in a moment why it is called Architectural Voices. But before I do that, I just want to remind those of you in the audience who are not from badge that this output is in line with the wider aims of Erasmus Plus strategic partnerships for higher education, which is to promote innovative methods and tools for teaching, training, learning, and assessment, develop and use open educational resources, ultimately, in other words, open textbooks or free and open material, educational software, in the form of guidelines like the one we just listened to, full courses, full curricular or syllabi, or teaching and learning materials that will be made available for free. They will be shared under Creative Commons license and published in one of these open educational resources platforms. So I guess what I'm going to present today falls under the teaching learning material subcategory of these intellectual outputs. So as I said briefly before, the output is specific to architectural and civil engineering students. So it really addresses those needs that we thought are specific to this subcategory of engineers. The ultimate aim was to produce podcasts and videocasts, and the students were the ones to produce podcasts and videocasts. The original idea was developed by Aalto University and University of Pavia. Unfortunately, Aalto University dropped out, and so the realization is just University of Pavia's realization. Okay, the goal of this output was to help students adjust their compositional skills to those professional genres that are unique to the architecture and construction professions. And while adjusting these compositional skills, the idea was that they were also to develop technological competence that is often associated with these professional genres unique to the architecture and construction professions. So being able to choose the medium that is most appropriate to audience, to the actual message, and be able to describe a work of architecture and improve the observationals and descriptive skills, both of the functional characteristics of a building or built environment, but also of the aesthetic features. So there's function and also aesthetics involved in terms of the language that they need to develop to put together a podcast or a videocast of some of these buildings designs that they design. Before the pandemic, we really thought we would be able to take students on study trips so that they could record the environment, perhaps record some specific buildings, some descriptions also given by specialists. They could put together architectural walkthroughs. Unfortunately, this could not happen because of the pandemic. So what eventually what we wanted the students to be able to do was put together oral presentations of their own architectural projects, the projects that they maybe had designed during their degree programs. So here you have just a visual representation of one of these oral presentations that I'm going to describe in a moment. This was done during the pandemic, as you see, on Zoom, with the student remotely connected. Okay, in order to get to the final product, these oral presentations of design projects, I devised a set of writing activities. Some of them are summarized here, like this one. The example is describe the design brief of your project, covering the following key elements. So 5 elements are identified as being crucial to a description of a design brief: function, concept, constraints, precedents, and features. And there's a set of questions that I formulated to help students cover the various points above: the function, the concept, the constraints, the precedents, and the features. So the questions sound like this: what is the design for? Or what is the building's intended use, its main function? So as you see, function is one of the keywords here. Then students should perhaps ask themselves, what is the scale and kind of the design project? In other words, is that a building renovation? Is that more of a restoration or master plan design, or perhaps redevelopment of an entire area? Then they should continue asking themselves, what are the constraints, the limitations on the design, including budget? And perhaps what are the precedents? In other words, existing models that helped you as designer find your design solution, and why those precedents and not others. So eventually they should be able to answer the question, what are the main features of your project? What is unique about your project compared to the existing models? And perhaps you can get to details such as materials, the materials you chose and why, and perhaps explaining how they contribute to the design concept. So you get a list of questions like this that help you put together the presentation, the PowerPoint presentation, in its more written form. Then to help students transition from writing to speaking, because the final product is, like I said, an oral presentation, another list of questions or tips, if you like. Sometimes there's an imperative, like in this list, compared to the questions of the previous list. You would get to do things like use the answers to your questions as a checklist that you have addressed some or all of the key elements of function, concept, constraints, precedents, and features. And also make sure you add captions to figures. Make sure you don't leave free floating figures in the PowerPoint presentations. Make sure that the captions are self-explanatory captions. And of course, things like make sure you rehearse the oral presentation of your project so that it does not exceed 5 minutes. So I want to show you an example, which is what a student did this year. So she was in the room, she was presenting in front of the classroom. A colleague, not from Badge, but from GELS, was also intervening and in the audience together with me. So she was kind of experimenting also with the hybrid context of these kind of mixed presentations. So she was in the room with the PowerPoint, sharing the PowerPoint on Zoom so that the colleague from GELS could also participate. And she had her fellow students in the audience and myself. Before I show you this example, it's just a few minutes. As you see, it's 3 minutes. It was supposed to be 5, but she only presented for 3 minutes. I want you to have a look at, to watch the recording, trying to address the questions that I'm gonna show you. So first question, as you watch the recording, can you try and observe the features of writing and composition that you think are lacking? So if you want to make a note of this question, as you watch her presentation, what features of writing and composition do you think are lacking? And also, what features of oral delivery do you think are lacking? Next, do you think the presentation purpose is achieved? So if you remember, the initial task was present the design brief, describe the design brief of your project. So do you think she actually achieves this purpose with her presentation? And finally, what advice would you give her to improve the overall quality of her presentation, if you have any. So if you can please take a screenshot of this and now try and watch the presentation with these questions in mind. And I'm gonna share a new screen. Okay, share sound. And you should be able to hear.
The design brief of the reinforced concrete multi-story building. The design brief consists in the structural analysis of an existing reinforced concrete multi-story building located in Campobasso. The building is for a residential use, and the building constraints are a structural dimension of the existing building, so as shown below, the aggressive exposure class and the category, the ground category and the topographical category, and also PGA. PGA is a peak ground acceleration, and is 0.2 times G. G is 9.81 millimeters per square second, and means the medium seismic activity. At the bottom of this slide, we have two plans. On the left, there is the structural grid, and on the right, there is the internal partitions. After this, the building's features are the construction material specification and the reinforced concrete structural elements cast in place. For the first, for the material specification, we used concrete class C30/37 for foundation, beams, pillars, and walls, and we consider B450C for the steel bars. So for the structural elements cast in place, we have floors, beams, pillars, walls, and the direct foundation beam. And floors are built in pretension beams and hollow blocks. Beams are cast in place and have a rectangular section, and so pillars have square section, but external pillars are different to the internal pillar, because the internal pillars are smaller than the internal pillar. And finally, we have walls, and the direct foundation beam is a T-section beam, and as shown in this slide, and that's it.
Okay, and I hope this was audible. I hope you had a chance to answer these questions here. Following this presentation and all other students' presentations, I analyzed the language that I think is needed to actually write up the brief, the way they put it together for this presentation. And here I have a list of language that I think you need to help students develop in order to get to the final videocast or podcast or whatever this architectural walkthrough eventually is. So for example, you need to teach them the different drawing types, like preliminary, schematic drawings, construction drawings, or detailed drawings, and the different scales associated with the types of drawings. The basic types of views, like for example, plan sections, elevations, that we also saw in this particular presentation. And also more generally, the stages of the design process. So the collaborative development, for example, process, which is very often what happens with these large designs. And then to get more specific about language areas, perhaps language that you need to describe shapes, location and movement in space, like adjectives, prepositions of place and movement, but also existential structures. I don't know if you noticed, but she was using the re's, there are very often. Then, of course, the ordering of nouns and adjectives, as you see in the title, the reinforced concrete, multi-story or multi-story building. How do you order? Is that the right ordering or not of all these features that architects need to describe building? So descriptive language in general that you need for features of buildings or construction details. There's also language that they need to present their design projects orally, what sometimes is called signposting language. Again, from this particular presentation, you might have noticed after this that she uses to transition from one slide to the next, and she ends up with, and that's it. Ending very often is an issue, and then she has this slide, thank you for your attention. More generally, language that is needed for verbal visual interaction to be successful, handling all those images, things like as shown below at the bottom of this slide. On the left is, perhaps rather dropping the there, on the right is, etc. So the existential structures I was mentioning. Then, of course, problem is how much text to put in the slide, how to use the captions, how to move on with the presentation, avoiding back and forth movements, which is sometimes an issue with students. And features of pronunciation as well. I wonder what is your perception of, for example, this particular student's accuracy and intelligibility, and what the impact of these L1 realizations might be that sometimes might jeopardize understanding in a context of English as lingua franca. So basically, to conclude, what I'm going to publish as IO5 is a matrix or a set of matrices like this, where you have a task like the one we discussed, describe the design brief of your project, and then these questions or checklist, each filling, occupying a cell that might help students get to the final product. I'm hoping to publish this combined with examples of students' presentations, perhaps not the full presentations, but just excerpts. And now that I have a second version of this and all other presentations, before and after feedback, somebody suggested from Badge that I should publish both. So the first run and then the second version following feedback to compare cases and to see whether the questions from the checklist were actually addressed or there was improvement or progress as well. So I'm gonna finish here, and maybe we have a couple of minutes for questions. Katja?
Yeah, sure, of course, there are some questions. Thank you very much, Maria, for this interesting presentation of IO5. And yeah, we could understand your student, of course. So are there any questions from the audience for Maria?
I have something if nobody else has a question.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah. First of all, I'm pleased that Vilma said something about the students' beautiful Italian accent. I wish that I had said something in Poznan, because I thought she spoke very well. What I wanted to say was what I felt was missing from the presentation was a motivation for the design brief. So I felt she introduced it very well, you know, and it was an analysis, but I'm interested in, you know, why analyze this? And this comes up in Maria, you have a box that says what is unique about the project compared to the existing models. I just, as with a walkthrough, I'd really like the aim of the walkthrough to be motivated. And I wonder if that's something that you could include, or whether you agree with me that that's very often that's a very good way of beginning a presentation, is to motivate it.
Okay, I'm now, sorry. Okay, sorry, I was a bit in trouble with the PowerPoint. Yes, no, I do agree. I think, yeah, probably what is unique about your project compared to the existing models was definitely underdeveloped in this particular case, if not absent at all. And of course, I mean, it only took her 3 minutes and she had at least 5 to fully present the project. So that's definitely something that can be improved. Usually the motivation, as far as I understand it, should appear here in the first cell. What is the design for? What is the building's intended use, its main function? So basically, why you did what you did is actually what is it for? Also because, I mean, these design projects, they're not but very often they're not realized. It's just it's not professional realization yet.
Yeah.
I can see my connection is unstable. Can you still hear me?
Yeah.
Yep. And so I guess probably something that can be developed, but I wonder how much more than actually reminding students that they really have to be clear about the intended use, the what for, basically, which is the motivation in design, isn't it? What for? But yeah, thank you, Jamie, for this point, because I guess
I like this table very much. I think this is definitely something that I can use. I work with students in architecture and lighting design more specifically. They do walkthroughs, and this could be very useful. Yeah.
Okay,
really
thanks. Nice. I didn't get Vilma's comment. Maybe it's in the chat.
Yeah, it is.
I see if I can read it. She had a beautiful Italian accent. Okay, but still intelligible, right?
Yes.
Okay. She definitely improved the second time. Lots of things improved, but I thought I will present them in the next online multiplier event. But yeah, thank you for all the input. And if anybody else has different input also relative to...
Yeah, Maria, my name is Angelica. I'm from INSA Strasbourg. And we also have architecture and civil engineering students. I'm the head of international office, but I'm also a German teacher. And so we do something quite similar for our students. They prepare our presentations in English and in German. And I'm just wondering, do they do the presentations with you, with language teachers, or also with architecture and civil engineering teachers together?
No, unfortunately they don't. It's just the language teachers. Unfortunately they don't. No, we're not there yet. That kind of integration with faculty from the disciplines is not happening yet. What we are starting to get in terms of internationalization is some of the specialist courses that are taught in English by my colleagues, Italian colleagues. So this faculty that wants this kind of course, they also, some of them teach their courses in English, but it's very few of them. And we don't get, to collaborate to the extent that they present the project for both the faculty's courses and my course, so that there's both in the audience. We're not yet there.
Yeah, because that's what we are doing. And the architecture or civil engineering professors, they ask questions in English or in German, and they also improve their language skills, and they appreciate it very much. So I don't know, perhaps we could once exchange a little bit about this, and I can also send you what we are doing, how we are preparing our students. Anyway, it's very interesting what you have presented. Very, very good. Thank you very much. And
Thank you. And I will definitely get in touch with you.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Okay. Thank you,
Thanks.
Maria.
Thank
Okay.
you.
Okay, are there some more questions or remarks from the audience? Batch partners, wherever they are also? No, not yet. Okay, as we said, anyway, we can have a discussion tomorrow if during the night you have some more questions coming up tomorrow after the last presentation. Or of course, you can always contact us if you have some more questions about the intellectual outputs. We're more than happy to answer your questions or to help you also implement the resources once they're on the website. Okay, so then for today, the presentations are finished. We will have 2 more presentations tomorrow, it's Saturday, maybe a bit difficult, but still very interesting. So maybe can IO6 and 8 just give a little teaser. At least, is there somebody from Poznan? No, Ivana and Vasilia, maybe you can give some, because you're starting, maybe say just some words about, just to say what you're going to present.
Hello. Tomorrow our intellectual output, which is about soft skills for engineering students, it will focus on the presentation skills, material that was prepared, and also specific videos which were prepared and presented by the students, because our intellectual output had a considerable involvement of students into this project. Looking forward to seeing you, meeting you, and get your feedback tomorrow morning. Sorry, it's a Saturday, but it's going to be short.
Yeah.
I apologize for this.
You also have a student.
Yes, and we got George,
Yeah.
who is a student. One of the team consisted of 10 students, 5 from Bielorussia University and 5 from Aristotle University of Thessaloniki. George is with us, and you'll see him on the video performing tomorrow.
Okay. Ivana, do you want to add something?
Hello, well, nice to see you and nice to meet you again. Sorry, Tanya is sitting behind me, so we had a clash, with sound. Well, Vasilia basically mentioned everything. Tomorrow, we have the presentation early in the morning. Well, we are the first presentation, IO6. So we are looking forward to this very much, and we hope to see you also tomorrow and to discuss the intellectual outputs. Hi, George. I didn't know that you are in Germany. Yes, this is it. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you, Ivana. And then we will have another presentation, which is a bit different because it's not resources for the language teachers to be used in language classes, but it's EMI, so English as medium of instruction. So our partners in Valencia and in Poznan developed a whole Moodle course for staff and another one for teachers. For EMI. So ready-made, you can import them on Moodle directly and use it for EMI classes at your university. So I think this will be really interesting for you tomorrow too. So come back tomorrow morning. It's only 9:30, so that's not that early. If you don't live in a time zone where it's only 8:30, yeah, sorry. Okay, so thank you very much. And you can write any questions to us, stay in contact with us, and see you tomorrow morning then. And for the batch partners, just one word, we have a little break, and then the batch partners, we meet here on the link at 3 o'clock. Okay, thank you very much. And for the batch partners, see you soon. For the others, see you tomorrow morning.